Welcome back, everyone. So today we're going to get a little bit naughty. 20,000 people are playing concurrently, but it is a secret, and whether or not it's even something that we should be talking about or acknowledging, well, that's actually led to some very spiky talk between developers, PR people, and some of the games press. Today we're peeling back the curtain on the next game that Valve are making. It's called Deadlock, and it's one that they say they don't want anybody to talk about, but I think they absolutely do want us to talk about it, because what we're actually seeing here is genius tier viral marketing. Which obviously means I'm pretty excited about Deadlock, just like you should be excited about today's sponsor. Okay, look, technology and techniques online have went so far that online privacy stuff is actually really concerning to me. I don't know about you, but the TLDR is data ends up getting harvested by data broker companies, and then they just sell that data to the highest bidder, right? Thing is, if you were asked, you probably would not want that happening to your data. Now, the thing is, we have a legal right to take our data down, but that's not really realistic because we're all busy, and that's where Incogni come in. So what they do is they automate the process for you, and code Bellular News gets you 60% off an annual plan. If you go to my link, incogni.com/Bellular News, well, that's how you'll get the offer. From then, it's so easy. They get to work right away, so here's my statistics and why they matter, right? 102 takedowns sent, 81 completed, and 21 in progress. Now, those are instances where my data is not secure, where a spammy advertiser, a scammer, or a corporation who just wants access to me without my consent, where they can just go and get it. That feels bad, it feels wrong, it can lead to spam, security breaches, and stuff that just sucks. Now, taking a look at the graph, the recent big spike is because you can now add up to 3 email and home addresses, and then the slow increases are just them continually monitoring brokers to not only pull my data down, but then to keep it down and also to add me to suppression lists so it's not picked up again in the future. This whole thing took under 5 minutes to set up, so you can see how to me it seems like a no-brainer. You can see for yourself over at incogni.com/Bellular News. If you use the code Bellular News and you follow that link, you'll get a 60% discount. So check it out. Thanks to them for sponsoring. Let's get into the video. Yes, the game that 20,000 people are playing at once, but that we're not really supposed to talk about. Now, Deadlock is a game developed by Valve that is in testing, and it's basically a MOBA third-person hero shooter. Private playtests have been running for months in the game, but this week we've seen over 20,000 people playing it concurrently, and per estimates from Gabe Follower, we're at almost 200,000 people having access to the game. Now, you may be thinking, oh my god, a private test. How could you possibly know how many people are playing it? Well, that's because it has a Steam page and you can literally look it up in SteamDB. Here's actually what that looks like, where we can see it going from 1,000 players concurrently in July all the way up to 20,000 players this week. Now, the reason for this growth is a system that Valve have implemented, and honestly, it's one that is kind of genius. If you are in the test, you can invite more friends directly through Steam, which means that access to this has proliferated across Steam. I've actually had people in my email offering me access, and now we're at the stage where I actually know people who are literally just playing the game right now. But the odd thing is that while so many people have been playing it, it hasn't been massively talked about. There's no press release or anything like that, and there's been quite a lot of secrecy about the game. And again, that's because, like I said, nobody is supposed to be talking about this based on their experience of playing it. That is, of course, until things changed this week. So, enter publication The Verge, who decided to go and play this game. So, The Verge's reporter was not invited to the test by Valve under official press terms. So often as a member of the press, you'll be on an email list, you'll get access to something, usually you will sign an NDA, and, it's all fairly simple. The only obstacle that reporter faced before he was able to play the game was a pop-up screen. Now, this pop-up screen was not a form of registration. It was not a non-disclosure agreement. It just asked you to not share anything about playing the game. Now, the funny thing about that pop-up is he didn't actually have to accept it. He was able to press the escape key, which just made the pop-up go away. And that did mean that he got access to this game through an official means. Whenever this pop-up appeared, he just said goodbye to the pop-up by hitting the escape key, and he was then able to just play the game. That meant that he played the game, recorded some footage of playing the game, and basically tore down the mystique by writing an article about all of it. And that, of course, did mean that he was banned from playing the game after he wrote about it, where Valve were obviously able to see the account that he was playing from. Now, this led to, honestly, guys, it led to a pretty crazy situation online. A lot of people basically saying that The Verge had disrespected Valve by breaking a gentleman's agreement to participate in the test. And the argument basically was that if Valve were comfortable sharing these work-in-progress builds with the world, then they would have officially let people talk about them. And I guess in a way this maybe brings to mind in some people the whole debacle with Half-Life 2's source code, being yoinked, and then that basically, that was a humongous PR shit show for Valve back in the early 2000s. Now, some PR folks then argue that this would lead to developers not trusting the press in any way when it comes to early looks at the game, whereas from The Verge's perspective, well, they simply went where people were, and then they talked about something that was in the public domain, because you cannot really keep something a secret when 200,000 people are, know about it, have access to it, and are able to play it, especially when loads of those people are playing it without having to formally agree on not sharing any info, because again, that pop-up box could just be cancelled by hitting the escape key, meaning you could play without agreeing to it. Then The Verge also said that from their perspective, as an outlet that frequently gets early access to loads of tech things, they basically said that if Valve really wanted to keep this a secret, then they absolutely could have. And yeah, that is the case. They're testing their game. They don't have to test it with 200,000 people. And if they wanted those invites to work in a way that was more, let's just say, robust, then they still could have had that involve a formal NDA. But the way that they implemented it did not involve a formal NDA. So, in that case, how does a playtest work if you want to keep it secret? Now, Valve are one of the most profitable, well-equipped companies in gaming. If they wanted to control this more tightly, they absolutely could have. So with private playtests, you usually end up signing a contract to get access to the game. Now, that doesn't mean that you're bought or paid for. It doesn't mean you can't critique the title, but it does mean that you agree to a set of conditions, and in return for that agreement, you get to interact with the thing. And when that happens, yes, there usually is an element of direct trust, because as much as you may have signed an NDA, yeah, somebody can obviously just post a screenshot on the internet. So there is an element of trust there. Now, if it's a small game or an unheard of company, there's not that much value in reporting about an unannounced game test, like from the perspective of somebody like The Verge, because it's basically an unknown and it doesn't really cross the barrier of being newsworthy enough to really bother with. But when the public are being given unfettered access to a test of a game that's already producing humongous numbers from a very, very large and influential company, then obviously that does pass the test of being newsworthy. And a pop-up that says, please don't share anything, that is kind of worthless if you can avoid saying yes. And then again, it's also worthless because Valve literally gave up control of who was in the test, because it then turned into basically a social networking invite-based thing. And usually whenever that's being done, be that waitlist for a product or this exact example, that's because they want to juice up word of mouth for the game. And if Valve want to juice up word of mouth, I mean, my god, have they been successful in doing so. I mean, literally think about the mechanics of inviting people to what is ostensibly a closed test. You almost have to break confidentiality or whatever to tell your friends about the game to get them into the game, which of course makes sense because this is viral marketing. It's exactly what it is, viral marketing. A lot of people have been angry at The Verge. Honestly, I think that is fairly dumb. There's a lot of developers and publishers that really seem to be offended over this. Again, I'd say devs, publishers, the press doesn't work for you. They should not be working for you. Sometimes you work together on a PR thing, but number one, the job of the press is to serve their readers. In a case like this, there's 200,000 people with access to this game. People obviously want to know about the game, and they can actually get access to the game, and they can show off what's in the game without having to sign things. It's obviously newsworthy. I mean, yeah, they skirted around a pop-up, but if Valve was taking that pop-up seriously, and if it was meant to have teeth, number one, it would be an NDA that you'd have to sign, and number two, you wouldn't be able to skip it by hitting the escape key. So, the idea that The Verge are breaking, gentlemen's agreements and screwing things up, no, I think that is a load of bollocks. I think the people who are angry about that are just playing right into the hands of developers and publishers in a way that is not best aligned with, with consumers and with what the press should be able to do. I do not understand the pearl clutching on this one, and I really think it is basically just that, pearl clutching. So when is a game news? Well, in the case of this one, there's a subreddit. There's an unofficial subreddit talking about their experiences playing the game, So this is a game that The Verge apparently, per some, can't really report on, but one where you can go onto Reddit and literally find gameplay guides. A public Reddit, not some private thing. And more than that, people have been sharing footage of the game for months to large audiences, with YouTube footage racking up hundreds of thousands of views. So Yes, this is Valve's first new game in 5 years. It is also an open secret, one that Valve did not answer The Verge's requests for comment on. That means that even if Valve doesn't want to talk about this, it absolutely is newsworthy to their audience. They are pretending in public that it doesn't exist, and that secrecy is not Valve being stupid, it is Valve being smart and basically getting free guerrilla marketing while players are sharing the codes. And the genius part of that is that normally word of mouth is just something that you've got to hope is there, but here they have added mechanics, social incentives to their viral marketing, and that's why it is really quite genius. Now remember, The Verge is not a game developer, they're not a publisher, they are the press, they're not a company in the games industry like Valve. That means that sometimes their goals will not be aligned with the industry, sometimes they will be aligned, but they are not beholden to the corporate interests of one of the largest companies in gaming. Whether it's Valve, Electronic Arts, or whatever that company is, the same principle holds. Now, of course, if Valve wants to blacklist The Verge because they've talked about this, they absolutely can do that. But guess what? They have not blacklisted The Verge. That is proven because Valve responded to The Verge's questions on SteamOS a day or two later. Basically, the stuff surrounding SteamOS maybe coming to the ROG Ally. I'll be talking about it on the channel in a few days, but we have actually covered it on a recent loading screen, so if you're one of our members of Bellular.games, you can check that out. Now, while the story here is ostensibly people getting angry at The Verge and Deadlock itself and the marketing for Deadlock being interesting, I want to talk about the game as well, because my god, it actually looks bloody great. So here's what Slasher said. Without getting expectations too high, the vibes from the Deadlock beta are being described as incredible, just as good or better than Overwatch and Valorant during the test period. With IceFrog plus Valve at the helm, I expect this game to be an instant hit. That, everybody, is bloody exciting. So by the sounds of it, this is not like Artifact, the card game that basically stumbled right out of the gate, and I can be pretty confident about that because there's vibes that we've heard. And I suppose I will say that while I have not played the game personally, people very close to me have. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. So let's talk about it. So here's what my stealthy, super secret reporter in the field has said about the game. In summary, it instantly strikes as having huge potential as a forever game for a decent chunk of people. It's not going to win any awards for presentation or visuals, but the game design is by and large, so far, excellent. Everything about it feels polished and full of possibility, except for the fact that it's a teamwork-based MOBA. It can't escape the attached limitations and thankfully doesn't try. There's an absolutely massive skill ceiling across a dozen avenues. It's an extremely Valve game in the best way possible. It immediately looks and feels like Dota in a million categories. It's really just third-person shooter Dota, both in a way that is complimentary and derogatory. Crowd control and teamwork heavy, as one could expect from a 4-lane 6v6 game, which can make it immensely frustrating at times, but of course that's natural because that's really the MOBA elements shining through. There are obscene levels of personal skill expression between skill usage, itemization, map movement, aiming, laning, basically all of that Dota stuff. Creep blast hitting and denying also adds a whole bunch of cognitive load to the laning experience. For some people that's going to be great, for others that of course will not be great, but I mean, hey, if you're going to be doing like creep denial but in the context of it being a shooter, I don't know, that could actually end up feeling sort of fun to me. Anyway, the hero designs are split between various different supports, CC heavy tanks, and basically just big solo carries. There are 20 so far, which is 8 more than Overwatch launched with, and they're not really hard categorized, it's more just how their skills blend. The way it works is you pick 3 heroes that you want to play, you set one as your preferred, and then you queue up and the game will assign you to one. Now in the gameplay, your aim is naturally important, but not so much as it is in something like Overwatch. Then there's what I've heard about itemization, where there is an item shop that is complicated as hell, but in a way that will be good to fans of the genre, where you have tons of options, and they've also got a fully working community-suggested build recommendation feature, which, yeah, that's pretty class. And to finish off some other thoughts, it's quite polished in terms of gameplay, but not really in terms of its UI or its visuals. It could feel a little bit sauceless, which really makes sense because the game feels like Dota by way of TF2, but basically instead of being military, it's a little bit more of a supernatural twist. The loading screen has got a shop called Crowleys, which, again, if you're thinking about a sort of spooky, culty, esoteric dude, you maybe will think of the name Crowley. In other things, there's a shotgun guy who invulnerabilities by jumping into a briefcase and then throwing a flying cloak that he teleports to, so that sounds kind of sick. And there's a guy that's a big thug with a smaller thug on his shoulder. There's a Yokai-esque Japanese hero who basically uses his sword and just nothing personals around the place. There's an astronaut-looking girl who manipulates time. There's a guy who is on fire and shoots flame bullets from his 2 fingers instead of a gun. And with that, that is the end of my special field report on what this game looks, feels, and plays like thus far. Again, it is in a closed beta test, so we can expect some degree of, of development and refinement as time goes on. To conclude then, this is a brand new Valve IP, and that's a very rare thing to happen. The gameplay honestly looks goddamn fantastic. This is a game that to me is immediately appealing. I also think that Valve want people to play this game, they want people to talk about this game, and they do want this fun, I don't want to call it drama, but the air of mystique. Valve absolutely wants that because it is creating just absolute, S-tier word of mouth, just viral marketing, so I think they've really pulled that off to a pretty genius degree. So basically, that's it. That's the story, that's the drama, and I think the TLDR here basically is, it looks like we have another major competitor entering the scene, one that's doing things a bit different, to the other hero shooters. I'm really excited, so best of luck to Valve. If you've been playing it, let me know what your thoughts have been down in the comments. With that said though, thanks for watching, I'll see you next time.